Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to another content creator video where I'm going to be talking about the first four different variations of the Los Santos Grand Prix circuit. That is the inner loop, the outer loop, the upper loop, and the lower loop. So basically we'll start off with the inner loop, which is probably my most famous track out of all of them that I've ever created, because this is what was verified by Rockstar. Having said that, there are some slight changes. So this is the main Los Santos Grand Prix circuit, and that is the Los Santos Grand Prix inner loop. So basically it takes off the top half, takes off the bottom half, and it's all the tighter, more technical portions of the track, as you can see there. Now, compared to the old inner loop, there are some slight differences, and this is really to make it a better racing circuit and to be able to fit 30 people. Now obviously in all of these loops they are going to be very tight and very technical for 30 people because they are smaller tracks, but they should still be able to manage it, whereas I wouldn't say that was the case for the older versions of the loops. So the main Los Santos Grand Prix circuit has obviously changed quite a bit since last gen. Obviously when we got to next gen I changed it up, removed the crossover, added some more props in and a bit more complex areas. So I needed to change all of the inner loop, the upper loop, the lower loop. I needed to change all of those to better reflect the changes that have been made to the main circuit. Now the inner loop is the first one that gets this treatment. As you can see, you don't go through that little section to go into the tunnel anymore. You go all the way and follow the track as it normally would go into the tunnel. You just go left out of the tunnel and back onto the regular part of the track here. Then you take a left here, which is a bit further down and a bit more open than the hospital turn that I used to have in the older version of the inner loop. But it's much more conducive to racing. You know, it's a lot better for racing. And the two main problem areas with the original inner loop were the hospital section and the right turn to go into the tunnel after the hairpin. They were very tight. They didn't really work for a proper racing circuit. So that's why I've updated it for this new gen version of the inner loop. And also all of the props and all of the checkpoints that you see around the track are in exactly the same place as they are on the main circuit as well. Apart from areas where obviously the track differs, all of the areas where the track is the same as the regular version, all of the checkpoints and all of the props are in exactly the same place. Now, I'll just point out, just ignore my driving throughout all of these. They're there to show you the layout of the circuit rather than how bad my driving is. It is pretty shocking at some parts. But yeah, just ignore that. Again, here, just ignore it. I didn't do that really. So yeah, you know, as you can see here, all of this is exactly the same as the regular circuit. So I'm trying to, with these loops, I'm trying to give the feeling that you are racing on the full circuit, just in a different configuration. So as you go around the inner loop, there should be nothing to really tell you that it's a completely different track. I'm trying to get that sort of real life feeling of, yes, you're on a racing circuit, but you're just doing it in a different configuration. That's why all of the checkpoints are in exactly the same place. The start line is in the same place. All of the props are in the same place as well as the regular circuit. This is basically just to give that sort of feeling of being on the regular circuit, just in a different configuration. So the inner loop now should be a lot better for racing in general. You know, it's a little bit more wide open than it used to be. Obviously it is the tightest, it is the most technical of all of the loops, and that sort of breeds itself as having the lowest average speed and the highest lap time of the loops. So obviously all of these loops are shorter than the full circuit, but the inner loop is the one that has the highest lap time and the lowest average speed. So you do have to be technical, you do have to really work on getting those corners right. Now the inner loop isn't necessarily the longest in terms of actual length, but it is the longest in terms of the time it takes to get around it. So that just really shows you, you know, there are a lot more slower speed corners, and it is very much about the more tighter technical corners of the main circuit being part of this one. So let me know, you know, obviously now that you've seen this, let me know down below what you think about the changes. Those are the lap times that you're likely to see. Obviously the original inner loop is still possible to be played because it is verified by Rockstar. But we'll move swiftly on to the outer loop next. a lot of people, if they know about the inner loop, they probably wouldn't know that there have been lots of other loops and there's even a full circuit as well. So obviously there again is the main circuit, and the outer loop is like this. It is much more wide open. It's very, very quick, a very fast-paced track. Basically take out all of the bits in the middle of the circuit and you have the outer loop. It's very, very quick, very, very fast-paced. You are on full throttle for the majority of this circuit. Now, it is a lot more wide open than the older outer loop as well, and I would say it does have a little bit more of a technical section to it than the older version. Now, it's basically the polar opposite of the inner loop, so if you were to sort of put the inner loop and the outer loop together as an overlay sort of thing, you would probably get most of the main circuit, apart from a few slight differences that we will see in the upper loop and the lower loop. They're pretty much the polar opposite of each other. As you can see, you know, all of the first corner and the hairpin is just completely missed out, and you go straight down this long straight that you traverse down this straight on the regular circuit. All of the checkpoints, all of the props are in exactly the same place. The difference here is that you don't turn left here, you just keep going straight on, and you rejoin the circuit back at the old hairpin. So you've got the hairpin here, and you're back all the way down this straight. As I said, it's a very, very fast-paced circuit. You really do have to make sure that the few corners that you can take, you have to get them right, because there will be a big differentiator in how well you do. That's simply because the rest of the track is just a full throttle all of the time. So more emphasis is placed on the actual corners that are in the track. So you do have to make sure you get them right. But obviously, as you can see, you know, it's a very, very fast-paced circuit. It isn't out of all of the loops, it doesn't have the lowest lap time, but it does have the highest average speed. The only reason it doesn't have the lowest lap time is because one of them is is kind of a lot shorter than all of the others, but it does have the highest average speed, as you might expect. You're pretty much on full throttle, as I said, for the majority of the way along this. It's actually the longest of all of the loops. You know, this is easily the longest. I think it comes in at sort of 1.8 miles, whereas the inner loop was 1.65, and I think the upper loop was 1.7 or 1.75. But even though it is longer than all of the others, the lap times are much lower, because you're just at full throttle so much. So it's one of those sort of thrill rides. You know, you're just going around the track as quickly as possible, focusing on the few corners that you do have. And I would imagine that, you know, anything upwards of 20 people around this circuit would be absolutely crazy. It would be amazing to see, because everybody is just going at top speed. You know, by the time you get at the end of this long straight, you definitely will be at top speed. And to have 30 players all going around here at top speed would be incredible. So again, it is quite wide open. You know, it probably can handle 30 players. It's probably the one track that is the easiest to handle for 30 players out of all of the loops. You know, it's probably it would probably handle 30 players the easiest, just because it is so wide open. But the differentiators between people will be a lot lower as well, because, you know, there isn't a lot to it. But that's exactly what the focus of this track is. The outer loop, it's all of the fast corners, all of the outside of the circuit. The inner loop is very much the exact opposite. It's all of the inner part of the circuit, and the sort of the more tight and technical corners. They are meant to be polar opposites to each other. And those are the kind of lap times that you can get, as you can see there. Again, let me know down below what you think about the outer loop as well. And we'll move swiftly on to the upper loop. Now, the upper loop was originally created to better represent the newer north portion of the circuit, and this is exactly the same. So as you can see, you know, it basically focuses on that upper portion of the circuit that you don't see in the other loops. So this has been the main change to the regular Los Santos Grand Prix, and if you really need to practice it, the upper loop is definitely the way to go. So with the older Los Santos Grand Prix, it was very, very different on that northern section. There was a crossover. There wasn't as much to it, I would say, as there is at this point, and the upper loop was created to better reflect that, because that upper northern section wasn't really featured in any of the other loops. At that point, I'd created the inner loop and the outer loop, that northern section wasn't really represented. Now, obviously, there's been a change with the full circuit in general, so I had to make a new upper loop to better represent that. So obviously, you go straight 2 left-hand turns and then straight into the tunnel, and then from this point on, the track is exactly the same as the regular circuit. So again, as I mentioned, the regular Los Santos Grand Prix has all of these checkpoints in exactly the same place, all of the props in exactly the same place. This is basically exactly the same as this section of the regular circuit, and it only changes where it sort of meets up with the other parts of it. So you take a left round here, again all of those props in exactly the same place. You see people coming out of the tunnel there, but instead of going around the hairpin there that you would see in the inner loop, you instead go straight across, and you're back onto this section. You miss out the newspaper officers section, a really fast-paced end to the lap as you come round here, and this is basically exactly the same as the last part of the inner loop, which I also forgot to mention that was changed as well, just because there's a better flow around the outside of that part of the track, rather than what I used to have on the old inner loop, which used to be on the inside. So the sort of the start and the end of the track there's not a lot to it. It's pretty much just a left-hander after a left-hander. It's that sort of focus on the upper loop section that you're seeing now that really gives the track the main feel of it, and that's what I was kind of getting for with this. So this is kind of a mix between the outer loop and the inner loop, I would say. In terms of the feel that you get from it, it's kind of a mix between the two. There are some technical corners, but there are also some very fast-paced corners as well, and that kind of lends itself well to the track in general. The Los Santos Grand Prix as a whole has some technical corners, it has some fast-paced corners, it has some tight corners, it has some wide-open corners. I would say that the upper loop best represents what the sort of the main track is like. Obviously, you don't get a lot of the other corners, but it gives you that same sort of feel as the main circuit. Again, it's pretty short. It's a lot shorter than the regular circuit. You're getting lap times in the 1:05, 1:06 area, which is reasonably similar to all of the other loops as well, apart from the last one that we'll see. But again, I have to make sure that I like to make sure that all of the loops that I have represent every single part of the regular track. So you get, out of all of the 4 loops that you see, you get every single corner of the regular track. Every single corner that the regular track has is featured at least once in one of these loops, and they all have different characteristics and different variations that basically just show off the different parts of the regular circuit. And again, my hope is that as you're racing around the upper loop, for example, you don't feel like you're on a completely different track. You just feel like you're on a different variation of the main Los Santos Grand Prix circuit, and they've just moved a couple of barriers for you just to do that track. So there we have it. There's the upper loop, a little bit different because it doesn't have a crossover anymore and features the new upper section. Again, let me know in the comments what you think about the upper loop compared to the old one, or even just in general. And we'll move on to the final one, which is the lower loop. So the lower section of the Los Santos Grand Prix circuit has changed slightly from the very first video that I made, even for next gen. So as you can see, the lower loop is very, very simple. It's very, very simple of a track. You just basically take out all of the top half of the circuit and you are left with the lower loop. All of the southern part of it, that's all you need. Now this is very, very different to all of the other loops, I would say. It's very, very quick. You're getting around 50-55 second lap times in supercars, which is, very, very quick. And I would say that it can hold 30 players. Obviously, all of my tracks allow 30 players if that's what you want. It certainly can hold 30 players in a proper race, but it is going to be hectic and you're going to have to pay attention. Now, the lower loop, really the benefit of the lower loop is that it shows off the one part of my tracks that I always try to include, and I've mentioned before in the past, and that's seeing other cars in other areas of the circuit. So, as you'll see throughout this race, imagine having 30 people going around here. Coming into the newspaper officers section, obviously you can see cars coming out of that as you're going into it. And again, this is the sort of the newer section of the circuit that some of you might not be aware of. you take a right here and do a hairpin under the bridge. Now obviously you can see all of the cars that are coming around that right-hander. If you're going around that right-hander, you can see cars shooting past you. So this is basically representing that part of the circuit, how you can see other cars in other areas. And it is a reasonably fast-paced track as well. You know, it's basically characterized by two very long straights that are kind of intertwined by two reasonably difficult hairpins. And that's pretty much all it is. You know, you've got two reasonably quick corners at the top, but it's basically just the lower half of the track. You know, as soon as you get back onto the main straight, you're back to the lower section of the track again. You know, there's not a lot to this track, but that's the beauty of it. You know, that's just another variation, another part of the main circuit that makes these loops what they are. And the lower loop, it used to be very different, obviously, because the lower section of the track has changed slightly since my sort of introduction of Los Santos Grand Prix in the original video for Next Gen. But it flows a lot better. It better represents the track as what it can be. And again, all of the checkpoints, all of the props are in exactly the same place. So you could do this track on the regular circuit if you wanted. It would be quite tricky, but you certainly could. And that's what I'm kind of going for with these variations. So again, you know, I'm looking forward to playing these with a lot of people. They are going to be hectic, obviously, because they are shorter tracks, but they at least allow people the option, if you want to do that. If you want to have some shorter tracks, you can go for it. There are different variations here for you of the Los Santos Grand Prix circuit that will all give you a different feel and a different kind of racing experience. Try them all out. Let me know what you think. All of the links to all of my tracks will be in the description, and next week we'll be doing the other 8 variations of the Los Santos Grand Prix circuit that I've still got to go. So again, let me know what you thought about the lower loop and all of the other loops in the description, in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you think about all of these and the changes that I've made. Certainly give them a go as well. They're all available on PS4 and they will be available on PS3. And as I said, next week we'll be doing the other 4 variations of the track. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate your support as always, and I'll see you next time.